Alright, is it working? Whoop, I don't know. Okay, yeah, I think it's working. Okay, so hi Leanne. Thanks for talking with me today. So I wanted to start by asking if you would introduce yourself and your position in Nightlight Atlanta.
My name is Leanne Williams. My position is Director of Interventions and Outreach, and I basically lead the outreaches that we do here in Atlanta. I'm in charge of all the administrative work behind that and then leading it out as we go.
Great. And can you explain the purpose of Nightlight Atlanta?
Nightlight Atlanta is committed to addressing the complex issues of sexual exploitation through prevention, intervention, restoration, and education.
Mm-hmm. So what might be a typical demographic of someone who might work on the streets as a prostitute or in a strip club?
There are a lot of different ways to answer this question, but specifically the ones that we work with, we found a lot of them are African Americans, who most of them come from single parent homes, low income, not in the best educational areas, not the best schools for where they grew up. A lot of them do fit into the culture that is the African American church, so they have some sort of religion or belief of God. It's not always good. It's not always the best. We also have worked with some ladies, specifically lately, that have been in the strip clubs that are Spanish speakers, mostly from South America, Latin America, that we have noticed. I don't know a whole lot about their stories, typically because of the language barrier.
Mm-hmm. And so why do you think that Latino women in particular might be vulnerable in a situation like this?
The ones that I have met in the past that were in a specific area that were more in prostitution than in entertainment industry were here from Mexico. A lot of them were not legally here, so they didn't have paperwork, they didn't have any way to get a job, and so they were kind of made an easy target for pimps and people in that area who could help them make money, so to speak, but actually ended up putting them in a worse situation than they would have been not doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So do you see any relationship personally between strip clubs and prostitution?
Yes, definitely. They're in just the same way women are being pimped on the streets to stand on a street corner. They're also being pimped and forced to work in a club, and instead of standing on a street corner, a lot of them get what they call dates from the clients in the clubs. They don't actually do it in the clubs most of the time that we know of, but that's how they make the initial contacts.
And so, obviously this industry is a tough one for people to work in, for women in particular to work in, so why do you think that they don't leave the industry?
There are a lot of addictions. Most people would jump to say that it's because of drug addictions. Most of the time, the average entry of prostitution in the United States, age 11 to 14. Most of those women or young girls rather, are not addicted to drugs when they first start in the industry. It's either used as a coping mechanism or their pimps and traffickers get them addicted to drugs in order to keep them in the industry. There are also a lot of addictions to the fast money that's coming through, thousands and thousands of dollars that come through their hands, within a short amount of time. Also, like I said, a lot of the women are from single parent homes, so their pimps are usually much older men, and it's the first man who's ever told them they're beautiful, told them they love them, took them to get their fingernails done, took them to dinner, sort of wine and dined them in a way that a father should have, but they never actually experienced that. So through that whole process, they become addicted to their pimp, essentially. And even though he's not treating them well, he's beating them, he's abusing them and forcing them to do things that they wouldn't do. It's the only person who's ever told them these things, and he's filling a void. So, and then addiction to the life. It's a whole subculture of a community where they all kind of take care of each other in a sense, not in a way that we would describe taking care of each other, but that's the way they would define it.
Right.
Is that
definitely? So I know that Nightlight has done a lot to make an effort to end, maybe trafficking, to encourage the women to come out of the industry, things like that. But what suggestions do you have for government, the average citizen in society, and maybe the church to continue to make these efforts to support these women?
One thing, honestly, that has been a huge obstacle for us is when the women are ready to leave the industry, we have a really hard time finding them jobs, because they have a record or because they have gotten their ID and everything taken away from them by their pimps. And so on a government level, sometimes it's been very difficult to either try to get their records expunged for whatever reason, for them to do the community service, or the time to get that happen has been a big challenge. Finding the records to get their social security cards and their IDs and their driver's license and whatnot has kind of been several hoops that we've ended up having to jump through. The church coming together to love these women, like I said, it's a whole subculture. There's a community, so when they decide to leave, a lot of these women feel very lonely. So the church and student groups and bringing these women and men into their community and loving them for who they are, not because they've come out of this, or just to genuinely be a friend to them, I think would make a really big difference in a lot of their lives.
Cool. Do you have any specific suggestions in any way that we could help the Latina women?
I think helping, a lot of them do fall prey to this because they don't know much about how, especially if they're coming, like the ones that I said I worked with are not legal in the United States. They don't know how to even make that happen. So maybe coming alongside them and helping them in that process of things, also helping them to understand day-to-day things that we all understand that work in the United States, balancing a checkbook, language barriers, teaching them certain cultural norms, how we treat each other, how we don't treat each other, what is appropriate, what is inappropriate, because they may think, certain things, the way a man talks to a woman or treats a woman is appropriate in the United States, whereas we would never actually consider that as appropriate. But they may not know any better.
Awesome. Well, do you have any other comments or anything like that for the class?
I think that you guys are great.
Thanks. Thanks, Leanne.
Did that answer